With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Leicestershire, England, home to picturesque Donington Park, one of the finest racing circuits in the UK. This week we find ourselves at the national layout. We've chopped off the final hairpins and replaced them with a fast chicane. This drop of corners will not mean a drop in action though, just like I dropped audio there for a couple of minutes. But first and foremost, this is round 7 of the Formula 3 series in the Precision Racing League, coming up live from the virtual Donington Park circuit. Hi everybody, my name is Joey Tebben, and very excitingly joining me in the booth is Kyle Turner, making his RaceSpot debut, and producer Raphael Sankey is behind the scenes. Kyle, welcome to RaceSpot. About a minute late here with those audio issues, but we'll get into the action anyways, and it's going to be a very exciting time here in the Formula 3 series.
It's fantastic to be alongside you for this, Joey. Of course, you see the schedule in front of you and the races to come in rounds 8, 9, and 10. But 7, Donington Park, the national variation. Like you said, this track's shortening up here. Really excited to see the sub-60-second lap times that these drivers can get with some clean space. And it's sure to be a fantastic 44 laps.
We're getting to that crunch point in the championship. Only 3 rounds to go after this. The tight and twistiness of Imola coming up next week. The even tighter and even twistierness of Motegi coming up after that. The road course at Twin Ring Motegi, or Mobility Resort Motegi as is now known. And then after that, as if it couldn't get even more tight and twisty, it's a season finale at one of the newest tracks on iRacing, Rudskogen in Norway. In the Drivers' Championship, it's been very much a 2-horse race with Julio Palacio and Ozzie Milwane picking up the majority of the wins this season, and therefore picking up the majority of the points this season. Steven Ritters has had a great run of things so far. Unfortunately, it does not look like he'll be in the field tonight. Andrew Moran will be very happy about that because he'll be picking up some good points in that battle for 3rd. It's a close battle for 5th in the championship with Lucas Hill, Kevin McPherson, Jake Vasconcelos, and Neil Alexander very, very close on points. All of those guys graduating from Formula 4 last season, or the IRO4s rather. Michael Dowden and Richard Swindells bring us down to the end of the top 10 in the drivers' standings. But in the team standings, things are slightly less close, unfortunately. There's been some great results for Evolve Sim Sports, but unfortunately for Ozzie Milwane, he's the only one delivering those good results. His teammates have not been active in the F3 series this season. They've all moved into other series in the PRL, so Evolve Sim Sports will not be defending their team's championship titles from seasons ago. It's YS Motorsports Black at the top of the standings for the moment, and Atomic Racing is hoping to pick up a couple of extra points to hang on to that 2nd place ahead of Island Autosport. The SRT Esport team sits 4th, and the secondary Atomic team rounds out the top 5. That's Parabola Midnight, the other YS Motorsports squad, Noxie Motorsports, the aforementioned Evolve Sim Sports, and Parabola Cobalt down to the end of the top 10. Qualifying is currently underway at Donington, but before we can take you into that action, we have to thank all the people who make all of this possible here on RaceSpot. And first and foremost, this coverage is brought to you by Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminum profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. This coverage is also brought to you by Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, their button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. visit raceboxsimracing.com and also get a 5% discount, also using the Precision5 coupon code. This coverage is also brought to you by The Butt Kicker. Butt Kicker products provide incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat with The Butt Kicker. And Mecha Sim Hardware is a small company from the Czech Republic, and their goal is to produce high-quality sim racing hardware. If you're looking for a high-end pedal set, handbrake, or sequential shifter, visit Mecha Sim Hardware's eShop right now to get you up to speed and check them out. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. For more information, visit moradness.com. And last but not least, Ninja Trader. Better futures start now. Trade the world's future markets with Ninja Trader and visit ninjatrader.com to access unlimited free trade simulation. Speaking of unlimited simulation, it's open qualifying here at Donington. We've been underway for a couple of minutes now, but on track is actually Austin Harris on pole for YS Motorsports with about 3 minutes to go. So we see two of the Atomic Racing teammates trying to work together, maybe give each other a little bit of a draft.
Be interesting to see if they can beef up that time just a little bit. Plenty of drivers to watch in this field. You mentioned, of course, Steven Ritter's unfortunately not appearing here to defend that third spot in the championship from anybody who wants to take it, but a driver to watch as well. Ozzy Milwane, you mentioned, trying to deliver results for Evolve here in this particular race, and honestly trying to jump a couple positions here, still being second in the championship despite a DNF in that round 3 race. So certainly well within the right to grab some points here. 3 podiums over 6 rounds. Hopefully the 4th tonight.
Austin Harris, another one of those drivers who has graduated from the IRO 4 series. Had many, many great runs in that series last season. Wasn't able to get the win on the board, though. So that was very, very frustrating for him. This could very well be the day he turns it all around, though. We see one of his teammates, rather, Michael Dowden, a little bit further back. Driver who was also very successful in the IRO 4 series. It's a graduation theme here as Michael Dowden rounds the final chicane. That's going to be one of the critical points here. There's a very large curb on the left side there. No hairpin, just a fast chicane. No improvement for Michael Dowden that time.
Certainly takes some of the variability out of here with those hairpins being removed, but at the same time, you're right on it. They have to watch each other in that chicane, especially coming out of lap number 1. You don't expect things to get too hectic coming into the first turn of action, as long as the cars give each other well enough space, but towards the end of that first lap, if everybody's still close within the pack, could prove to be quite tumultuous if they don't give themselves that space. Andrew Moran here coming through to the line to finish up just over 1 minute. Not going to be good enough to get too high up on the table here, currently sat P6.
I'm a fan of the word choice. First broadcast on iRacing, and we're already breaking out tumultuous. So we're gonna have a good future here.
Well, hopefully not a tumultuous future. Sorry to reuse it there, but it's easy enough to say. Eric Dubé rounding the corner here. Be interested to see who rounds out. I'm looking to see anybody try and break into Austin Harris's 59.2 up at the top of the table here on board with Julio Palacio, leader of the Drivers' Championship here, coming around currently at 52 to that final chicane, hoping to take it well, lock a time in here in the final minute of qualifying, down towards the final straight, the final line, and it's well over the anticipated time. Not going to do it there.
Gonna get one more lap around here. In open qualifying on iRacing, you can set a lap time as the time runs out, but you have to cross the line before the clock runs out. You can finish your final lap time once the clock runs out, but you do have to cross the line before that clock reaches 0 seconds. Andrew Moran hops up into P5. He beats Julio Palacio out of the top 5. Stephen Verity looks like he's not going to improve here. He was very, very quick in practice, topped the timesheets. May have a little bit of traffic up ahead of him, and he knows it. He pulls off. He's only going to be able to start second.
So Lisad here, coming around, trying to set something close, time waning down, 12 seconds to go on this qualifying session. It's going to be a rather close call, 59.943 final time, clocking in good for P11 at this point. Still racing around, trying to get one better on this final lap, but into the grass, that's probably going to do it there as we hop to Andrew Moran, trying to hop even higher up than P5 in this qualifying.
And this is such a short lap. It's less than a minute, so margins are absolutely minuscule. Andrew Moran searching for 5/1000ths of a second here as he brings it to the line. Can he find it to beat Kevin McPherson? He backs out of it before he even gets to the line, so I think that's a sign that he could not find it. that's about the end of qualifying here. Still a few more drivers out there trying to get those final lap times in. I think Julio Palacio is out on track. That is the 26 on your screen, or 326 rather, of Kevin McPherson. Still trying to get a little bit more time out there. Could he advance his way from the front row?
Kevin McPherson now coming around for the final time of calling in this qualifying session. 50 seconds headed towards that all too familiar final chicane, trying to take the curb well and riding along that side out towards the final straight on that far end. It going to clock in around 59, just creeps up into that 1 minute mark. Not going to grab too many more positions here. Right behind Max Shabali, excuse me. Clocking in a 59.322 for the best time. Good enough for P4. Solid start here.
And that's going to be it for qualifying. Max Shabali was the final driver to set a lap time, so we should have our grid ready here in a matter of moments. Either way, it looks like an IRO4 grid from last season, with Austin Harris, unlucky 13, starting on pole either way. If I'm not mistaken, this is Austin Harris's first pole in the PRL. I got to check the data here, but I'm about 95% sure that it is. And yes, it is. I've confirmed it. First pole in the PRL for Austin Harris, ahead of Michael Dowden by a measly 0.003 of a second. Stephen Verity has won in this series before. He's looking to get back up to the front. And Max Shabali, not too shabby, P4. Kevin McPherson and Andrew Moran make it all YS Motorsports black on row number 3. And then championship leaders Julio Palacio and Ozzie Milwane starting a little bit deeper in the field than they would have liked. It's Mr. Sneaky Takeshi Kita, P9, alongside Corey Precker on row number 5. Brenner Del Mar on row number 6, alongside Sully Saad, who had a little bit of bad luck in the GT3 race earlier this week. It's Blake Ziti, unlucky 13th, alongside Eric Dubé, Lucas Hill and Brad Miller, and Neil Alexander and James Carter in his home race of sorts down to row number 9. Matt Schlosser and Barry Cochran 19th and 20th, Oliver Hartley 21st, and Jake Potts, who's won a race this season, did not get a lap in qualifying. We'll see if he actually makes it to the grid in the first place. A little bit of a shorter grid in the F3 series here tonight, which is disappointing. I find this a very, very fun track, but I think we'll put just as good of a race on here with a little bit of a mixed up grid up front.
You have to anticipate it. Starting battles, to be sure. Austin Harris will have work to do to defend that lead position early on, but you mentioned it right towards that middle of the pack, a little bit ahead of it, though. 7th and 8th, Palacio and Milwane, respectively. There's going to be an early battle there, I can tell. We'll see how quickly either of them can try and gain some positions, because obviously going into the first couple of turns of this track, you expect it to be somewhat gradual. The drivers just trying to get the feel of things on lap 1 before they start to really send it into high gear. So could certainly see some quick jumps here at the start.
Here we go, waiting for the lights to go out. It's Austin Harris on pole for the first time in the PRL, and he's going to see the drop of the lights for the first time in the PRL. We are racing in F3 at Donington. It's a terrible start for Ozzie Milwane in the back, but look at Michael Dowden trying to challenge to the outside into turn 1. It's going to be Harris holding on as Stephen Verity tries to go for second, but backs out of it.
Coming around, still holding the front. This driver's starting to spread out here. So you find Austin Harris still at the lead of the pack. Everybody else giving a bit of space, trying to take these corners as quickly as possible, coming around. Everyone in a straight line, incident-free for the most part through the first couple of turns. Fast laps ahead indeed. And now a move down the inside. It looks like unable to fully pull it off there into P3, but still jostling for position.
Stephen Verity giving us a show on lap 1 in that chrome F3 car around the outside of Michael Dowden up at the top of the hill. Not going to be able to do it. The longer radius drops him out of things. Very, very long straight here. This is going to be critical come the rest of the race. And Stephen Verity knows he needs track position. They need to stop fighting with each other. He goes around the outside in the chicane. That's not going to work. And Max Shabali gets punted by Andrew Moran. They come together, and the race leader, Austin Harris, spins as well. Michael Dowden takes the lead on lap 1. It's all kicking off.
Well clear of the chicane, but couldn't get it done on the exit. Went too close into the inside, it seemed like, and clipped enough of the grass to send him gone. So down and into the lead, as you say, Austin Harris. Have to do a lot of groundwork just to try and get back into this picture, losing that very quickly here. Long race ahead. Drivers can't get too far ahead of themselves, but already on lap 2, you're seeing so many drivers dive and really attempt these long overtakes on some of the middle of the track.
This is absolute craziness on lap 1, and there's another off. That's Stephen Verity from second in the middle of the grass. He's going all the way to the back. Andrew Moran promoted up to second, and suddenly Michael Dowden, who looked like he was out of touch of the lead, fighting with Verity, finds himself 3 seconds ahead of the field.
This is exactly what you want right here. Big amount of space in the opening moments. You can really give yourself that advantage. Try and stay as incident-free as you possibly can through that chicane. Not take too many risks early on. Set those consistent times. Dowden's got a really strong chance here to set a large advantage, but more scrapping going on here back further on.
It's Corey Precker for YS Motorsports trying to hold off Blake Zeedy into turn 1. Zeedy down to the inside, later on the brakes. It's an easy move for Zeedy at turn 1. But look at all of these guys from 4th down, basically. This is the benefit of surviving the opening laps, of not making any mistakes. That's why we called Takeshi Kita Mr. Sneaky. He qualified a little bit deeper in the field than normal. He's up 5 spots. Blake Zeedy is up 8 spots. He's one of our biggest movers.
It's easy to feel comfortable in those positions for Takeshi Kita and Blake Zeedy as well, but they've got drivers nipping at their heels the entire way through. So those mistakes that you mentioned going to be crucial to mitigate as much as possible, coming over this crest and making sure that everybody stays well within their own rights here. It doesn't seem too chaotic now, but of course that's after the shakeout that lap 1 was absolute mayhem, it seemed, to all the drivers from front to back. Now settling in, but a late move here, not quite as quick on the brakes, and it's created another little jumble here into the final straight.
We've got the replays of everything that happened on lap 1, though. 4 wide into turn 1 for just a moment between some of these guys. Barry Cochran not getting looped around there. That is actually the 87 getting looped around at turn 1. That was Eric Dubé. We will get the replays of Austin Harris and Stephen Verity as well when we can. But there's no time for replays, Kyle, because it's still all kicking off on the track. They refuse to give things up. Blake Zeedy just pulled down pit lane for some reason. A very early stop for him, and that promotes Brad Miller up into the top 5.
Certainly going around on the inside as well. More battles here. The 35 you see coming around of Corey Precker attempting to make any sort of ground gain here on Brad Miller, but it's still somewhat distant, and the rest of the pack is chasing, attempting to go around the outside, make a couple of moves here on Corey. Is Ozzy, who's trying to climb back, reclaim some of those spots. You expected to see this, maybe not as early on, but now finally sending it down the inside of the chicane, getting the line and executing it so well. Ozzy, what an overtake.
That was aggressive. If I was living my British commentator life, I would call that an absolute stonker of a move, but I'm not going to do that.
I mean, I feel like you're well within your right. Ozzy knew exactly when to send that. It's the chicane, not necessarily the position that you see too many people trying something like that, but you're right on it. It's aggressive and it works. It's stuck, taking advantage of this hyper focus that it seemed that Corey Precker had on the forward pack, and now conceding a position as well to Brenner Del Mar a little bit earlier on in the previous lap. So dropping down, losing a bit of space to a bit of indecision here from Corey Precker.
Brenner Del Mar, another one of those drivers who's made up quite a few spots from that grid position, but up over the top of the hill, he's got Corey Precker behind him. I think we might have Corey Precker on our Zoom cam tonight. We'll see if we can take a look at that a little bit later. But is he going to go for the dive that Ozzy Milwane made on him? No, he is not. He's going to back out of it, preserve himself. Corey Precker going to stay in line behind Brenner Del Mar. That makes me wonder, after the craziness of the opening laps, could this just be time to start backing off, start saving tires, maybe saving a little bit of fuel, and just start to get into the rhythm of the race here?
I think you have to think so at this point. We're still early on into this 44-lap stint, and yes, they're quick laps. The race will move as fast as you want it to, but all these moves being made, Corey has to be careful not to put himself into an unsavable position here, because all of these dive attempts that are coming up all too short, like you say. Make sure that you save those tires up, save that fuel, make sure you've got the resources to get you through the rest of this race. If you're dropping positions this early on, it can be tough to really scrap them back later.
Pit stops are not explicitly required in this series by the rules, but they are required by the laws of physics. You cannot make it to the end of the race on one fuel tank here, and it's a difficult question if we'll actually see tire changes here. With a track like this, where basically every corner is a right-hand corner, as the dive from Neil Alexander into the chicane, hops the curb though, and Lucas Hill gets involved. Matt Schlosser gets absolutely thrown into the air. There's one little clip of the curb there from Neil Alexander, screws everybody up on exit. And Julio Palacio says, "Thank you very much. I'll take those 3 free positions."
And that right there is the very unfortunate circumstance. Another slide off the track behind the action, as well as Matt Schlosser goes off and is going to take some time back to reset. But again, the unfortunate circumstance of that aggressive send down the chicane, you clip that curb a little too tough and it can really creep up on you there. Everybody gets backed up in the rest of the pack. And now this battle for 5th, Ozzy attempting to climb even more into this field, nipping on the heels right now of Brad Miller.
I think we know over the course of this season that Ozzy Milwin has been faster than Brad Miller every single race, but the question for him is, how aggressive do you be here? You're deeper in the field than you'd like, but your championship rival Julio Palacio is also deeper in the field than you like, so do you get 100% aggressive and push your way to the front? Well, he's going to say thank you very much, and yes, I will, to the inside of Brad Miller down the front straight into turn 1, as easy as can be. Now he's got to start looking 5 seconds up the road to Takeshi Kita, but more importantly, as I was saying, he's looking 4 positions back right now because his championship rival Julio Palacio is having an even tougher day.
And that's the most difficult thing. What I could see happening is Palacio getting stuck behind Corey Precker here, who's been trying to make these aggressive moves, falling off a bit of the pace of Brenner Del Mar, but still only about 3 or 4 tenths back. So it's really marginal at this point, but Corey has been struggling to make that move, make that dive. You see now just sticking as close behind Brenner Del Mar as physically possible. But how much longer is that going to take, and how much longer will it take Julio Palacio, who is falling off the pace a little bit of even that middle pack of Brenner Del Mar and Corey Precker? Palacio has a lot of work set out ahead of him.
Got a nice little recovery drive here. Remember when Eric Dubé spun at turn 1? That was only 9 laps ago, but it feels like it was about a century ago. He's trying to recover back into the top 10. Poked and nosed to the inside of the chicane, wasn't able to do it. Lucas Hill is going to hang on to that for the moment, but it is a recovery drive for Eric Dubé. You never want to be the guy who spins at turn 1 or gets taken out on lap 1 for that matter, and I have a feeling it's going to make him a little bit more aggressive right about now.
You have to think, trying to make this move around. We've been watching this battle for quite some time, wondering where it's coming through, but this middle of the track section giving each other some bit of space here. A little late coming out to the outside. Now turning around, you can see this progression of this battle. It's only getting closer and closer here, jumping on board, and the picture doesn't get much better. Running up against the back there, Eric Dubé, closer and closer, really grabbing at those wheels, trying to get any bit of grip out of this turn, hit exactly where it needs to, and is keeping line very, very well. But this could go on forever if it's not changing anytime soon.
Got bad news for fans of James Carter. He is one of the many, many drivers who has sustained heavy damage. We didn't actually see what happened to him, but he's been in the pits for about 4 laps time, so he's waiting to get those repairs done. Sully Saad still waiting for repairs to get done as well, as is Neil Alexander, who we saw flying through the air a little bit, or partly flying through the air, I can say that much. Matt Schlosser is out of the session altogether, and Stephen Verity as well is donezoed. But here is a replay of, I believe, what happened to the 76 and Neil Alexander, doing a little bit of a loop-de-loop, no harm, no foul there, and things got far worse for him a little bit later, I think.
Yeah, just a very difficult spin against the back of the pack, trying to keep pace, couldn't get it done. We resume this push as well. Unfortunate to see, of course, Matt Schlosser falling out towards the chicane incident, and right off the track goes Corey Precker as well into the dirt. Very unfortunate there.
Welcome to the club, Corey Precker. I think there's single digits of cars that haven't gotten into trouble so far tonight, so it's only a matter of time. But here's Oliver Hartley, who is one of those drivers, I think, who hasn't gotten into trouble. He's slowly but surely moved his way forward from the back of the grid in qualifying. He's got to hold off Blake Zeedy, though, who is definitely looking to move his way forward. It's the Gulf number 17 versus the Williams number 50. Zeedy much quicker through the final chicane. Is he going to go to the inside in turn 1? Hartley can't decide where to go. Zeedy can, and it's to the inside into turn 1.
Had to give way at a certain point, although it may not be a complete move altogether. Still sticking along the inside, trying to get that, but losing pace out of the turn. And the position's given right back just as quickly as it was taken. Hartley maintains the lead right there. And time again, you're going to see these drivers attempt to throw that overtake through the final straight across the start-finish line. But Hartley, an excellent defense here out of the second and third turn to keep the position, if only for a brief moment more.
I'm trying to remember if Blake Zeedy has any damage. I don't think he does. I think the incident that took him to the back of the field was just a simple spin. but it is entirely possible. He might be hurting in a straight line a little bit. We ride on board with the rear attenuator of Oliver Hartley. Great camera angle here provided by RaceSpotTV as Blake Zede gets very, very aggressive again. It's another great run out of him for the chicane. Be a little bit later on the brakes in the turn one and actually get it done this time. He's going to peek to the inside again.
He's got the speed, he's got the pace, but we've seen this story before. Will Blake Zede like the ending this time around? They still go wheel to wheel around that first turn, but now maintaining the inside line, and it looks like the position is all but handed over to Blake Zede at this point in time. Different outcome, and Oliver Hartley will have to give way.
A little bit out of shape coming down the hill there. That is one of the most difficult corners on the track. It's called the old hairpin. It's very much not a hairpin anymore. It's a very, very high-speed corner, and Oliver Hartley was going drift mode the whole way there. As further up ahead, Brenner Del Mar and Eric Dubé side-by-side through the chicane. That's ended in tears many times tonight, and it's only going to end in tears for Lucas Hill, actually, who gives way to Eric Dubé. Is he going to send it back into turn one? He thinks about it. Peeks to the inside, but Dubé is going to be later on the brakes, and Dubé is not going to have P9s. He throws it off the road, and he's going to have to make that same pass again.
You can tell he really wanted to keep that spot in his line. Lucas Hill had the pace to take that inside and try and make the pass, and Dubé just got a little too greedy with it. We're seeing some major sliding from some of these cars in those high-speed corners, the old hairpin for one as well, just grabbing a bit too much of the dirt. Dubé really pays for it there as we have a slow down on the track here, massively into the chicane. Big pass to make.
I think that was a slowdown penalty for Andrew Moran. Unfortunately, I know that because last time this series raced at this very track, I experienced that slowdown myself. I still have the bad memories about it. If you cut the old hairpin too much, or actually if you cut the corner after the old hairpin too much at Schwantz Curve coming up over the hill, you can get a slowdown. Or at the top of the hill at Coppice, you cut that too much, you also get a slowdown. Poor old Andrew Moran, he's come befoul of the rules. You can't be cutting the track too much.
Unfortunate, to be sure, but still having a decent amount of pace here. Kevin McPherson trying to get a bit more distance, still 6 seconds back of Michael Dowden, who has seen the front of the pack since the chaos that lap one was and never looked back quite yet. Andrew Moran right behind Takeshi Kita, climbing the table slowly but surely here. And Ozzie Milwane about 5 seconds back. It's tough to see whether or not the game is really coming through. We've still got about 30 laps or so of racing to go here, but Ozzie Milwane has had a bit slower of a time catching up to these leaders who are just continuing to comfortably distance themselves.
Bad news for fans of Sully Sod. He has foregone those repairs. He's done for the day, but James Carter, he's not giving up. He's gone 9 laps down now. He's got 8 minutes of repairs, but I have a feeling he's going to try and get back out there on track. That's a very James Carter kind of thing to do here. But we do have the battle for third here. McPherson, and then Moran is trying to put the fear in McPherson to try and take him out of second, and Mr. Sneaky himself, Takeshi Kita, he's right back there searching for that podium. Separated out for a moment. The whole field is separated out for a moment here as we try and settle into the rhythm, but we're about to get out of the rhythm in a couple of moments as Takeshi Kita, right as I mentioned him, loops it up over the top of the hill. It could be a commentator's curse. It could just be a mistake, but Mr. Sneaky could not sneak out of that one.
You have to start believing it at this point, though, because so many drivers have fallen victim to it at this point in time. Early on, it was the chicane. Now, at this point, everybody's sending it just a bit too tough as McPherson attempts to continue this climb forward, but still continuing on. Takeshi Kita, unfortunate spin, grabs way too much coming out of that corner, too high speed, but drivers just have to watch themselves, cannot get complacent in these higher up positions, no matter how large the gap is. You take one corner a bit too fast and it all crumbles away.
Got the replay of Takeshi Kita here, coming up over the hill, just barely clips the grass, barely clips the gravel. Doesn't hit the wall, though, so well done by him for saving that, but he has lost a spot to Ozzie Milwane, and Takeshi Kita, not going to be too happy about that. That's taking him out of the fight for the podium.
And that's given more hope, potentially, to Ozzie as well, who's just been climbing further and further, had a lot of distance to make up about 5 seconds before that spin off, and good on Takeshi Kita to save the damage, but like you said, unfortunate concession of the position at this point in time. Ozzie now 1 spot away from grabbing the podium. Julio Palacio as well, still sat in a firm 7th, about 2 seconds behind Brad Miller, trying to gain more and more as this race goes on. Not halfway just yet, but down this first straight, you see moves attempted to be made. But again, it's a tranquil state that we found here after the beginning of the race. Everybody spaced out for the most part, and it's all on the drivers to make sure they keep themselves in check.
We've traded the tumultuous. We've got tranquility. I don't know what T word's coming up next, but I hope it's not tumult again. I hope we stay in tranquility.
Absolutely. I'm hoping we don't get terrifying at any point in time. I don't think we will. I think we've worked out most of the wrinkles that would occur here, and these drivers are keen on what to watch out for. Obviously, track conditions not an issue here in this particular race, so just keeping it within yourself. The mental has to stay strong. Again, you've still got a long race ahead of you. Got to make sure that if you're pitting as well, how to time that, get everything set up. But for the most part, everybody's settling in quite nicely here.
Through the final chicane, it's Andrew Moran for the Megacorp car, rather. Very, very familiar paint scheme for those of you who've been with us on the PRL coverage for the past couple of seasons, but he was essentially forced after last season to move up to the F3 series with the loss of the IRO4 series. That's been replaced with an F1600 series that it's a little bit of an undercard to this series, goes unbroadcasted. Andrew Moran moved up to F3. His rival Michael Dowd moved up to F3. All sorts of drivers moved up to F3 this season. It's a little bit like the ladder in real life. We're just seeing a bunch of promotions here, and I'm happy about it. I like to see some new faces in this F3 series. We're shaking it up a little bit.
It's fantastic at the end of the day to see these drivers move on to, potentially bigger and better outings, bigger and better races, really hone their skills and move forward in the field. It's quite a fantastic thing to see. Of course, we're still on board here with Andrew Moran, who has just been sat behind Kevin McPherson at this point in time. A fierce battle for second that Andrew, time and time again, really wants to send it down this final straight, but just doesn't quite have enough pace to really grab that inside line with any authority here. So we'll have to get comfortable watching the rear of Kevin McPherson's car zoom around this track.
I think I did see a dead car to the side of the track after the chicane, and my eyes did not deceive me. I think that's Max Shabley, who unfortunately has finally met his demise at the chicane. We'll take a look at that when we can, but it's not been a great day for Atomic Racing, unfortunately. James Carter gets into trouble. Shabley gets into trouble. The captain, Steven Ritters, unfortunately didn't show up tonight, so it's all on Takeshi Kita up there in P5 to keep the flame going. It's funny how bad luck seems to strike the same teams at the same time. One of your teammates starts having trouble, seems like everybody follows through.
It is truly the most difficult thing, especially on a circuit like this. Obviously, the tracks that we have coming up in the rest of the series for Formula 3 here are only going to get more narrow and more twisty, as you alluded to earlier. But this track in particular, as it looks like Barry Cochran may have headed into the pits as well. Neil Alexander falling back a bit further from the pack. Hopefully, Barry doing all right. Incident-free, we hope. But the rest of the fight, as we head to a replay here and see exactly what happened earlier on.
That's Oliver Hartley behind Barry Cochran. You were saying you hope there wasn't an incident, but I have a feeling we might be about to see one up over the top of the hill here. I don't actually know if there was contact there. The front wing loss from the 711 of Barry Cochran makes me think there may have been a little bit, but that did look a little bit like just a curb touch. I'm going to have to look at a helicopter view of that when we can.
Yeah, difficult to read, going wheel to wheel for a time, but Oliver Hartley getting that pass, and Eric Dubé now sitting in the pit as well, dropping down to Oliver Hartley, who will reclaim the place and try and climb back against Blake Ziti, who sits about 11 seconds ahead at this point in time. Towards the middle of the track we go for this race. Downside battle for sixth. You see Julio Palacio trying to gain a position and has plenty of straightaway speed. Goes to the outside line coming into the chicane, but has more than enough clearance to make that pass through as Palacio gains another place.
It looked like another slowdown there from Brad Miller. Also looked like a slowdown for Kevin McPherson a little bit earlier. So a lot of those drivers fall into the behest of the rules here. We're halfway through this race. You'd think everybody was getting into the rhythm, but some guys just trying to extend things a little bit more. They're racing drivers. They want to get every 10th they can. You just got to make sure you don't go over the limits too much, because you'll get those slowdowns and you will get those incident points. And the PRL, you can only get 13 incident points before you're forced into a drive-through. 17 incident points and you're disqualified. You got to learn the track limits and you got to respect them.
And that's the most difficult thing. 44 laps around this very short track. track, you're bound to think that a driver will, accidentally cut a corner. You want to give good graces and know that they're not potentially, purposely trying to do so. But at this point in time, you expect to see it at least once or twice from anybody. Obviously, got to watch it. Kevin McPherson is going to be somewhat frustrated. I would feel a close battle with Andrew Moran right behind. Now that has changed, and Moran is giving himself a bit more pace, a bit more distance in that particular stint, as the rest of the pack just, again, starts to settle in here. Eric Dubé still sitting in the pit for quite some time here. Got a couple people behind.
There's our old guy, Eric Dubé on Zoom, or that's Corey Precker, rather, on Zoom. I didn't recognize him because he's not usually in VR. So he's changed things up for us tonight, going for the world of the virtual reality, the world of virtual insanity, and I don't know if it's worked for him necessarily, but I don't know if that's a VR problem or if that's just a bad luck problem.
Certainly is a very interesting approach. I can't necessarily knock it. It certainly would give you that level of immersion, trying to get closer and closer. Certainly a good amount of distance to climb the table here as it currently stands, sat in P10, a good 11 seconds or so behind Lucas Hill to make that climb back. But it's nice to see the drivers on their setups as well, the different intricacies they have, the specificity of their setups as well. Very interested to see how they get into the zone. Corey Precker very much doing so.
McPherson trying to recover from this slowdown here. The reason I bring up the instant limit is, well, first and foremost, it's something we talk about every single week, but it's something that I know a lot of drivers came into the bad graces of last time we ran here in this series a couple of seasons ago. It's something that that's always hurt me. I've been disqualified multiple times from PRL races for hitting that 17x incident point, so it's a little bit of a sore subject for me. So when other people reach that same misfortune, it's good for me. It's not just me who gets disqualified from these things.
And that's the thing, some of these drivers in the middle of the table, as we see some pit lane choices here for drivers to pull in very quickly. We see it's Andrew Moran and Kevin McPherson, which will give that second spot to Ozzy Milwane at this point in time. They both allow a bit of climbing up the table here, so we'll see how long this lasts. If Ozzy can finally give a test to Michael Dowden, who has just been clear and away, both exiting the pit now. Moran and McPherson. Moran slightly ahead of McPherson, as it was when they entered, so it shall be as they leave.
It's a good stop for McPherson, half a second in the pits quicker than Andrew Moran, so that gap has been absolutely decimated. We got a battle for second again here. Let's see what McPherson can do down into the old hairpin. Extremely high speeds. It's going to wear the tires a whole ton, but critically, even with all these high-speed corners, nobody elected to take those tires. There's times when drivers debate, should we take tires? Is it a short enough lap? Is it a short enough pit delta, rather, that it's worth it to take tires? Seemingly everybody in the field has said no, it's absolutely not worth it. Your race leader Michael Dowden is in, Ozzy Milwane is in, presumably Takeshi Kita is in. I think we're starting to get to the hard end of that fuel tank, and it's a pit lane party.
Certainly makes sense. Having already crested the halfway mark of this particular race, you expect everybody to duck in, and to your point, I expect that safety and security from each driver. They understand that some of these incidents we've seen early on have caused people to crash out, not of their own volition, but rather of the consequences that have come from these aggressive chicane dives and overtake attempts that we've seen from other drivers, the ramifications of which felt about 3 or 4 positions back. But now, as everybody exits the pits, tries to give themselves a bit more space, driven off the outside there, looking for a bit more room to work into this gap. Now, as Corey Precker coming out into the pit as well, all these drivers really trying to set themselves up for success.
This actually just now reminds me, Blake Ziti did not get into an incident earlier. The reason he was so deep in the field is because he pitted 21 laps ago. He came into the pits on lap number 4. I don't know if that was a deliberate choice or if he got forced in there somehow, because I don't know if you can go 40 laps on one tank of fuel. But whatever has happened to Blake Ziti, it's all shaken out, and right now it's worked out to get him to P7.
Feels like it could be a gamble on the rest of the table, attempting to pit a bit later, and obviously the nature of all of the moves that we have seen earlier on in the race, maybe it could have been an attempt to dodge some of that chaos as well. We saw lap 2 and 3 was sending some very shaky situations throughout the middle of the pack as they attempted to go through the chicane and other areas, the old hairpin as well, giving drivers some trouble push to the outside. So now Blake Z, I mean, that is the true question. How far can you take this tank for about 40 laps now on board, sitting behind Julio Palacio, giving him a heck of a time here, trying to push this pace further and further.
It seems like he's saving a little bit of fuel, because into turn 1, he backed out of any possible move there. He backed out of it through the old hairpin. I think the real test is probably going to be next time we get to turn 1, next time we get to the chicane. If he lifts out of it again, he's probably going to be saving fuel, which tells me maybe he thinks he can go 40 laps on one tank.
Certainly is within reason. You can see him inching closer and closer here into the chicane. Has to pull off, not going to get the line, but the straight line speed come out to try and bring it around the inside here on Julio Palacio, who's done well to defend at this point, but may not be in a very defendable position at this point in time. It's ever so close, but that dive can't happen just yet. Just having to buy time here, Blake Ziti. Still no real pressure from behind. Brad Miller a good 4 seconds back, but Julio Palacio feeling it and not necessarily getting that much closer to the top 5.
A bit of a clip of the gravel there, or the dust rather, for Blake Ziti. That's going to be an incident point for him, so he's got to make sure not to rack all those up. You don't want to throw away this 40-lap run with the incident point penalty. Up over the top of the hill this time, Ziti seems very, very content to just ride behind and save fuel. Our old buddy Blake Ziti, he's certainly got something cooking here, and hopefully that doesn't end in 16 laps time, forcing him to come down to the pits to take a splash of fuel.
Plan seems like it could pay off, but you're waiting for it.
I shouldn't have said anything. There he comes.
No. Into the pit lane, and that early strategy not going to fare well. Gonna have to forgive that one as Brad Miller climbs up and Blake Ziti takes a much needed pit.
Yeah, I expected that to happen. I didn't think he could actually make it 40 laps, but I was hoping we would see something remarkable happen. But poor old Blake going outside of the top 10. Or will he? It's going to be a race off pit lane, actually. Corey Precker coming down the front straight right now. Ziti exiting right ahead of him. Blake will hang on to the top 10. But this, whatever happened there, coming into the pits 20 laps ago, it's not worked out for him. He's definitely lost at least 3 spots from that.
Yeah, this is going to be a tough climb back as well. Obviously, Corey Precker is going to try and push that advantage from further back, but you see our race leader currently, Michael Dowden, having a little bit of a pass there through the pit exit, but still feeling very comfortable. I haven't seen too many issues thus far sliding through any turns, grabbing too much gravel for the most part. It's been smooth operating for Michael Dowden, who has a 6-second lead just about on Andrew Moran and Kevin McPherson close behind, but really just smooth sailing from here on out, it feels like, for Michael Dowden, who has already hit the pits and certainly feeling comfortable to take this all the way.
He's never won in the F3 series. This is his first season in this series, because as I mentioned, he graduated from the IR04 series, where he did get 1 win. So this could be a historic day for Michael Dowden, and that's always huge for your confidence. If you don't have that win on the board in a series, you definitely think you're competitive. You've had the chances, but once you actually get that win on the board, all that doubt goes away. It's a new bout of confidence, and see if that's the case for Michael Dowden in about 15 laps time.
Certainly got to be feeling good about it. 1 DNF, 1 did not start in these 6 rounds. The other 3 consistent enough points here, but trying to grab that victory. Close behind, though, and somewhat keeping that gap attainable. Andrew Moran, as Kevin McPherson has given way quite a bit. That obviously should give Ozzy Milwane a bit of a green light to try and grab that and get into the podium spots. That would be Ozzy's 4th podium of the series. Obviously finishing P1 in the first round, a pair of second-place finishes in first and 4th races of the series for Ozzy Milwane. So now finally making that pass through, as Kevin McPherson may have had to slow down here. It feels like something is afoot.
I think he spun. Kevin McPherson spun off the podium. There goes Takeshi Kita around the outside. Oliver Hartley, who's a lap car, is going to back out of that, but nobody can avoid the mistakes. Kevin McPherson made it 30 laps without one, but he has finally joined the fray of the spinners. I think he went off at the old hairpin, same place that Stephen Verity had his issue, and that's going to take him off the podium.
Consistency is absolutely key for these drivers at that old hairpin. Too many of them have been claimed by sending it a bit too fast on one lap, and that's all it takes. Kevin McPherson doesn't want to bet on anybody else making that same mistake, but at this point in time, it feels like that's where you kind of have to put your wagers at this point in time. Attempting to make a pass when the pack is this far spread out without an incident from somebody in front of you is going to be a tall task.
We'll get that replay up there for McPherson when we can, but who's going to be next? There's still 14 laps left in this race. I don't think the mistakes are done. And if Takeshi Kita is under pressure from Kevin McPherson, that is the possibility. There is a possibility that could end in a little bit of tears here, and who's going to be very happy about that? It's going to be Mr. Julio Palacio right behind there, P6, only 3 spots behind his championship rival Ozzy Milwin. So they were more separated than that before, but Palacio, who leads the championship by only 13 points right now, could be in a good situation. As here's what happened to Kevin McPherson over at the old hairpin, just barely clips the gravel, or the dust rather, then clips the grass on the other side, and there he goes.
The domino effect from there, high speeds cause it, and a quick enough recovery here for Kevin McPherson, maybe, but as you mentioned, already feeling the pressure from Julio Palacio right behind, trying to crack into the top 5, so it's going to be a very difficult position to climb back from if nobody else at the top is going to be moving. Takeshi Kita having an incident of his own earlier on with a large spin, able to save it, but a repeat again. You can't necessarily bet on that happening here. Kevin McPherson has to carve things out as Julio Palacio gains even more pace here, trying to grab that P5 spot.
I keep getting tricked. Every single time we do a race at Donington, I get tricked by those brown patches on the outside, because those are not gravel. That's just grass that's been desiccated. Apparently we scanned this track when there was a drought when iRacing went to this track or something, because it is just so dusty out there. It is still grass, and either way, it's got no grip.
If anything, the gardeners are not going to be very pleased about how much we've taken away from the old hairpin in this particular race. They'll have plenty of work.
I thought it was supposed to be rainy in England. How are we this dry? How did this happen?
In any case, they'll certainly have their work cut out for them once this race is done and dusted. Speaking of, we're getting quite close, and a bit of a slowdown there coming out of turn number 1, allowing everybody to pass through, it would seem. So now action continues down back into the middle section of the track. Kevin McPherson getting closer and closer to Takeshi Kita in front. The gap well less than a second, coming up on, honestly, less than a half at this point in time. May just be in store to make this pass.
Little bit of a drift there coming up to the top of the hill for Takeshi Kita. Those tires are feeling the British heat right now. That's the heat that turned that grass into Laguna Seca dust, and it's turning Takeshi Kita's rear tires into dust, seemingly. Up over the top of the hill, seems to have things under control, but through this fast left-right flick at the chicane, or right-left flick, I should say, to get my directions correct. Kita is under pressure right now. Great exit from McPherson. Is he going to go for it to turn 1? He's got the run. Does he have the time to make the move? Yes, he does, to the inside. Not late enough on the brakes, though.
He can see the window right there. Takeshi Kita did not get the exit he wanted out of the chicane, and Kevin McPherson saw everything in front, but as you mentioned, too little, too late. Not able to make the move pulled off in that point in time, but as we hop on board, you have to start feeling like it's only a matter of time. You can only get so closer in the middle section, and Kevin McPherson, once this, is getting very aggressive through, trying to send a double wide towards the middle section of the track, and now finally taking some of that inside line here, attempting, and the move is made. Takeshi Kita gives the place up, out through the turn, and now cresting over the hill here, Kevin McPherson jumps up into 4th.
Let's see, can Takeshi Kita fight this back? No, he can't. He's got to slow down himself. It's very unhelpful when the driver behind you has fear in his name, because Kevin McPherson put the fear into Takeshi Kita, forced him into a mistake. That's going to be P4 for McPherson, taken again.
We'll see what Julio Palacio can do from this position as well. Now up into 5th with the slowdown from Takeshi Kita. Obviously, earlier on, Andrew Moran giving Kevin McPherson a tough time from behind there in the battle for 2nd. Obviously, that's changed with Ozzy Milwin jumping up into the podium spots, but Julio Palacio still staying that consistent, about 1 second gap, trying to close the space behind Kevin McPherson here. Gotta feel like it's attainable at this point in time, but Palacio, time is all he needs right now. He needs a bit more of it.
Top of the hill, 8 laps to go. I want to make sure to give a shout out to Austin Harris, who was our pole sitter, who was our race leader. But if you're just now joining us, spun on lap number 1 at the end of the first lap. and that was the end of his day already. That's how Michael Dowden got the lead. That's how a lot of these drivers have been promoted forward. It's been an absolutely crazy day here at the Donington National Circuit. We expected some craziness, but maybe not quite this much craziness. Things have stratified out just a bit for the moment, and this is the closest battle on track with McPherson and Palacio. Here is Michael Dowden, who I mentioned. I said it's been a crazy day, but for him, it's not been crazy at all. He's just been doing a Donington track day for the last 30 minutes.
Honestly, you might as well have sent Dowden out on the track alone and said drive 44 laps, see how you do, set some fast times, and win the race. Why don't you? It's been that 6-second gap has been the closest anybody's really gotten ever since we've gotten to lap 10 of this race. It was upwards of 11 before everybody decided to take their pits, but as we hop on board here in the chicane, I mean, Michael Dowden has had an absolute field day.
Look at he's so smooth. That's the main thing I'm seeing there. I'm lost for words because he is just, he's not showing any signs of being complacent. He is just driving at 100%. He's one of the fastest drivers on track right now. This is just a masterful performance from Michael Dowden. I think we can say that much. I also do want to mention that it's a little bit of a shorter field tonight because we don't have some of the stars and cars you might be used to here in the PRL F3 series. No Steven Ritters tonight. The captain was busy with other things, as was his Atomic Racing teammate Richard Swindells. Jake Vasconcelos not with us tonight. James Molaire and Jake Potts from Knox. Unfortunately, both of them missed out tonight. Connor Harrington had a tough day last week at Mosport. He's not here tonight. Larkamp and quite a few others. So we should be back to a little bit bigger of a field when we come next week at Imola. So hopefully we got a few more cars around there. Michael Dowden, though, he's hoping he can finish ahead of all of them because he's certainly done that today.
It's interesting to think about as well with Michael Dowden taking this win, obviously grabbing a ton of points here. As you mentioned, first win it would be, not to jinx anything heading into the final couple of laps here. But aside from that, not too many shakeups on the rest of the table. We keep mentioning Milwain and Palacio in that battle for the Drivers' Championship. Palacio not failing to place outside of place inside of the top 5, rather, getting P5 or better in all 6 rounds thus far, attempting to keep that record intact here with Takeshi Kita well over a second back in P6. So Palacio not feeling too threatened at this point in time, but has given a bit more space out to Kevin McPherson, who is still attempting to get closer and closer to these podium spots.
This is going to be big for Palacio because counting the points in my head here, which I can't do normally. Commentators are not supposed to do math in the booth, but 2 spots behind Ozzy Milwain. We can say that's 2 points. That'll be an 11-point gap between Milwain and Palacio with 3 races to go. That's not a small gap by any means, but it's also not a big gap, and one bad race from either of those 2 drivers could absolutely derail their season. So they've got to make sure they're keeping the pressure on in those final 3 races. So let's see what happened to Blake Zede. Did he get into a little bit of trouble into turn 1? The number 50 into turn 1 looks pretty straightforward, and then suddenly it looks very much not straightforward.
Yeah, scary how quick that can change, but just a little clip there, grabs too much of the inside line and unable to really make anything of it. Spin, quick recovery, so not too much of an incident at that hand, but Blake Zede not very much happy with the turn out of that first. You mentioned, though, the battle, again, Ozzy Milwain. All it takes one bad drive from either Milwain or Palacio to really shake up the table here. Milwain currently sat at second with a DNF result in round 3. So impressive enough as that is. Palacio, again, remaining consistent here. Milwain trying to shake things up, and everybody else in the table. A fantastic drive from those you see at the top of the table here, but you need to do a bit more work. It'll only get more challenging at those twisty tracks in rounds 8, 9, and 10.
Looked a little bit like Kevin McPherson may have taken too much curb at Coppice Corner up at the top of the hill a little bit earlier, but no slowdown for him. He's okay. He still has Julio Palacio all over the back of him, though. Oliver Hartley, though, you can't escape the panopticon of our producer here. Is it another turn 1 mistake for Mr. Hartley? It's a different mistake, just a little bit too much speed and a little bit of rallycross. How about that?
Yeah, Stark opposite, I think, from the prior turn 1 incident we watched there. Gonna have to give that place up. But again, it's just these drivers having to stay on top of everything mentally. This track can start to blend into itself very quickly here with the short lap times. The fact that you're zooming around as quick as possible. Very well built for these cars, but gotta make sure that you keep your wits about you at every single moment here on board once again with Julio Palacio, who is attempting time and time again to just get the better of Kevin McPherson, but the pace is there, similar to the battle we saw earlier on with Andrew Moran. This time Palacio not finding anything here heading into the final laps.
As the fuel starts to come out of these cars, they get lighter and lighter, the lap times are getting better and better, and on that last lap, Kevin McPherson was the fastest driver on track other than Blake Ziti with a 59.914. It's not a foregone conclusion. You might think with Julio Palacio, your championship leader behind, it would be a far more straightforward affair, but no, this has been the race of McPherson's season, and it's only getting better as he starts to lose that fuel in the car. He's getting even more comfortable, and there's not much Palacio can do as we take a look a little bit further back. That is the aforementioned Blake Ziti. He just ran the fastest lap of his race with a 59.8. I have a feeling that came from the draft of Corey Precker.
He's got incredibly close here coming out of turn 1 as well. Does he attempt to send something down here around the outside? Seems like both drivers incredibly close. You see Blake Ziti tended to take a bit more of that outside line, but perhaps grabbed a bit too much outside the track and lost a bit of that pace. So Corey Precker will get a bit more distance here. It's a close battle down to the wire here for 10th, and obviously both drivers wanted to get as high up as they can, but Corey Precker for the time being proving to have a stalwart defense.
Out up over the top of the hill. 2 laps to go at the line, or 3 laps to go at the line rather, for Michael Dowden, because he crossed the line so long ago. It'll be 2 laps when he comes out of the chicane a little bit further back. But here comes Blake Ziti again. He's much better through the final part of the chicane. He's got great exits there every single time. He's not able to scare Corey Precker into a mistake through turn 1 though. On exit, Blake Ziti's all over the back of him again.
I have a feeling this has been going on for quite some time, lap after lap, but the real difference comes into the second and third turns and what happens after with Blake Ziti trying to get a better line here, utilize this draft if possible. Doesn't take quite as much of that outside line coming out here and still stays incredibly close. You've got to think now coming into this next lap, this next take of the chicane, that if Blake Ziti manages to stay as close as the previous lap, it could happen here, but cresting over the hill once again, it's still Corey Precker getting a bit more space here, a bit more time, but look at how close it is coming down this straight into that chicane. Surely Blake Ziti is going to have an attempt to make a move here. Can't make the dive through the chicane, but coming out, will the exit be solid enough? Oh, you know it absolutely is. It feels like only a matter of time before Ziti takes that dive, goes out to the inside of turn 1, but doesn't fancy doing it this time. It's still Corey Precker to stay ahead.
Got 2 more tries that, and also Kevin McPherson has given way to Julio Palacio. Palacio is finally able to make the move, so that's going to be critical in the championship. That's 1 extra point for Palacio, and in a race where he qualified multiple positions behind his championship rival Ozzie Milwane, he is going to finish 1 singular spot behind him in the race. That's going to be fantastic for Palacio. As a little bit further ahead, Michael Dowden takes the white flag. He's got a few more corners to go, and he's got his first Formula 3 win in the bag.
For what it's worth, Andrew Moran has taken a decent amount of pace here towards the front, narrowing that gap to just under 5 seconds, but nothing could shake Michael Dowden throughout this entire race. A solid lead all the way through. Very solid result from the middle, and what a win here for Michael Dowden.
Through the final chicane, he's won in the IR04s before. He's never won an F3 before. But I think I could say this much. No one was Dowden. Michael Dowden, he wins for the first time in F3, and he gets it done at Donington. His old IR04 sparring partner, Andrew Moran, comes home in second. Ozzie Milwane comes home in third after starting at the back of the top 10. And Julio Palacio recovers to P4 after a fantastic drive forward. Kevin McPherson rounds out the top 5. What an absolutely crazy race. You certainly picked an interesting one to make your iRacing debut, Kyle. We had a lot of action, a lot of drama, and it's not over just yet. Corey Precker and Blake Ziti aren't done.
Absolutely not. Attempting to make this move one last time as Corey Precker sends it down. Blake Zeedy taking a bit more of that inside line, really debating the move, but the distance is far too much to bear than it was in the previous laps, and you have to back that as long as this is clean. Corey Precker will take it home. Blake Zeedy pushing closer and closer, but is not going to get it done over the line. Corey Precker comes out ahead for that battle for P10.
Oliver Hartley is going to come around eventually. Everybody behind Blake Zeedy was one lap down, so he was the last driver on the lead lap. I want to give another shout out to James Carter. He spent 38 minutes in the pits getting damage repaired. Couldn't quite make it out on track, but he was trying his best to do so. But it was Michael Dowden up front, the real winner tonight, gets his first win in F3, ahead of Andrew Moran, ahead of Ozzie Milwane. Julio Palacio comes home just short, but he'll maintain the championship lead. Kevin McPherson gets a top 5 for, I believe, the first time this season, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, I am. He is in the top 5 for the first time. Mr. Sneaky Takeshi Kita, one mistake took him out of the top 5, and Ohio's Brad Miller finished P7. Brenner Delmar and Lucas Hill for Island Autosport made it 8th and 9th, and Corey Precker just barely hung on to the last spot in the top 10 at the end. It was a 2-stop for one reason or another for Blake Zeedy. Did not work out for him. He finished P11. Oliver Hartley went 1 lap down, and Neil Alexander got into a little bit of trouble, went 3 laps down. Eric Dubé had a spin on lap 1, ran into more trouble later. He was 8 laps down, and then we start to get into the used car lot of cars with very heavy damage. Barry Cochran, Max Shabley, our pole sitter Austin Harris, Matt Schlosser, James Carter, and Stephen Verity down to the end of the top 20. And that was almost it in terms of drivers on the grid. It was just poor old Sully Sod who's going to have the screen all to himself in 21st. A tough day for a lot of drivers, but I just remembered here, now that we're seeing the replay, I completely forgot about Ozzie Milwane's horrendous start. He already had a bad start by his standards, didn't get off the grid, went to the back of the field in turn 1, and he still finished 3rd.
And that just goes to show you how much happened within the first 3 laps of this race. That final chicane, again, proved so tumultuous, seems to be the word of the evening, and it rang true in that chicane. We saw incidents where drivers found each other, plenty of spins coming out of turn 1 into the middle of the track, as well as everybody jostled for position. Couple of opportunities as well where we saw cars coming out of turns 1 and 2 4 wide across the track, which is not an easy thing to do here at Donington. So plenty of chaos, and I think that definitely helped Ozzie climb just a bit higher, although a lot more climbing of the table was done in the middle of the race, so a solid effort there.
Waiting for our drivers to talk to us in the booth here. We're quite lonely, but we do have one driver. He's finally joined us. Mr. Andrew Moran is here with us. 2nd place out at Donington tonight. It seemed like this place was a little bit cursed. Everybody seemed to be making mistakes. Seemed like you were fairly mistake-free. What more did you need to catch Dowden?
I had a lot of mistakes. I actually received, I didn't realize at the time, but I received a little bit of damage from a lap 1 I touched in the chicane, but I don't think that hindered me too much. It was just I wasn't keeping my lines clean. I was just getting in the grass just a little bit, and I think I could have got him, but I'm happy with the 1-2 finish for the team. It's great.
You guys have been very, very strong in the team's championship so far. There's only 3 rounds to go. Atomic are still within touching distance, I think, but are you guys starting to get comfortable at the top of the team's championship?
Yeah, we definitely coming into the season, we're not thinking we'd even be close, so we're very happy, but no, we're still pushing for sure. We're trying to get some more wins. Obviously this helps a lot, but we'd like another one.
Well, Andrew, congrats on P2 tonight, and we will see you in Italy next week at Imola.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Andrew Moran, P2 tonight, but we do have his teammate Michael Dowden here with us. We do have our race winner, and it's the guy who we probably talked about the least amount. You stayed ahead of all the chaos. You stayed ahead of all the drama. How was that Donington track day for the last half hour?
Yeah, honestly, it was a pretty easy race after turn 1. It got hairy going into the chicane right at the end of there. A lot of stuff happened, but then the rest of the race was a breeze.
So you were one of those many, many drivers who graduated from the IRO4s last season. You got that win in the IRO4s last season. Were you searching for at least one win this season as your main goal in F3?
Honestly, looking at the competition last season, I was just hoping to get on the podium this season. So I'm really happy. Got a podium and a win now. So looking to build on that.
So Imola's coming up next week. You think you can go 2 for 2 there?
I actually have never driven Imola, so we'll see what happens. but it's an F1 track, and those are my best tracks. So I think it's definitely possible.
Well, Mr. Dowden, congrats on the first win on the F3 side, and we'll see you in Italy next week.
Thanks, Joey.
Michael Dowden, P1 here, his first win in F3. Like I said, nobody was Dowden tonight, and we got one more driver to talk to, and I think we'll have a little bit of a special treat here. The last driver in the top 10, Corey Precker, he's going to get to talk to Kyle Turner for the first time.
Corey, fantastic drive there, P10. Plenty of shaky situations, I feel like, but how did that drive go from your perspective? Plenty of chances where drivers giving you plenty of pressure from behind.
Yeah, I think wasn't the greatest. I wouldn't say that's not the greatest, but not the perfect drive ever. I could reduce that spin I had. Was kind of committed to the move, not really though. He was just really slow and whatnot, and I tried to just let off the gas a little bit, but he was getting a little bit slow, holding me up. But anyways, Blake Zedi and I had a great battle at the end, last 10 laps, within a second of each other. I tried to just defend as much as possible because he had more pace. He actually got me out of the pit lane, and then he spun in front of me, and then I got the lead back and just defended it off from there.
So fantastic defense, to be sure. Looking at the team championship as well, Yellow Stripe, your team currently sitting in the first position. How does it feel to get some consistent points again? I mean, it's been solid all season long with 3 rounds to go. Pretty firmly in the lead here.
Yeah, it feels great to be in the lead, and it's great. Shout out to Andrew and Michael for YS Motorsports 1-2, and we move on to the next race.
Exactly. It's a P10 here, but in Imola, do you fancy your chances any better?
I think so. I'm improving a lot now, and I think the field has gone down for participation wise, so I think that helps a little bit. And a lot of the races I've felt like tonight was a lot cleaner than most races this season. But yeah, I'm just glad to be in the top 10.
Fantastic, Corey. Well, congratulations on the P10 finish here. Best of luck in the next race.
Thank you, Kyle.
Corey Precker, last driver in the top 10, but that is all 3 YS Motorsports drives in the top 10. So that is a pretty great result for them. That was a pretty great result for us, I think. Craziness, especially on the opening laps. What more can I say about that race, Kyle? I'm at a loss for words. That was everything you could ever want.
Absolutely. There is a lot to unpack about what we had seen. I think I have to give massive credit as well to Andrew Moran here. You mentioned the fact that we didn't exactly have a full field for this particular race. Steven Ritter's currently sitting in P3, not present. Andrew Moran had to deliver a large race and very much so did with a P2 finish. So that is going to be huge going into the rest of the series here.
Well, that is going to be about it for us tonight. We hope you'll join us next week, because same time, same place. It'll be the PRL F3 Series live from Imola, the Autodromo Enzo e Dino Ferrari. I'm going to make sure I don't break out my Italian next week. I might have to, though. We hope you'll join us for that, but we hope you'll join us for PRL action 5 nights a week here on RaceSpotTV. Next up, it'll be the PRL NASCAR Cup Series on Sunday night. But until we see you then, I've been Joey Tebben. Kyle Turner's been Kyle Turner. Our producer has been Raphael Sankey. Until we see you next time, so long.